Good morning, America! How are ya? Monday morning rail will be 500 miles before the day is gone. Hi, I'm Denny Jelsma, and I'm at the world-famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is a pleasure. Today is Monday, and you know what we do on Monday? You guessed it. We do show and show and tell starts right now. Show and tell starts right now, and the train that I'm going to talk about is, once again, in my opinion, a very exciting train. It is called the Zephyr-Rocket. And you say, Zephyr and Rocket? What does that mean? Well, the Rock Island Railroad and the CB&Q did a joint venture to run a train from Minneapolis, St. Paul to St. Louis. The Rock Island took it first out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, went into Iowa, and at Burlington, Iowa, the Rock Island handed it over to the Burlington, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, or better known as the Q. And they took it down to St. Louis. You saw a video about the North Star that I did. Basically, there wasn't a direct service between Minneapolis, St. Paul, and St. Louis for many years, except for the M and St. Al had a train, but then they had you had to switch to the Wabash. The train didn't, or the people just went on the Wabash. But it took about 18 hours. In 1941, in January, the combined CB&Q and Rock Island introduced a new streamlined Zephyr-Rocket train. And they called it the Zephyr-Rocket. And I want to say that it was a mainline train. In a way it was, in a way it wasn't. For the guys that are real enthusiasts, they'll say it was a main train. But reminds me a lot like of the Gulf Wind on the seaboard. It was a main train, but then it wasn't a main train. And they used somewhat modern equipment. They used some heavyweights on there, and they painted them silver. And so you saw a lot of different equipment on this train, but one car that it was always on it was called a Tower Series, and that is this car right here. And you always saw they had a couple of those, one going north, one going south, and the Burlington had that. But it was a combination of Burlington cars, Rock Island cars, and it left Minneapolis being pulled by a Rock Island engine. Typically, they had one engine. Sometimes when the concept really got heavy, they would have two engines. And then they would switch engines. Sometimes they'd switch engines at Burlington, sometimes they just run it all the way through. But the train left Minneapolis about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The businessman got to enjoy some time in the lounge car. Then he had a nice dinner on the diner, and then he got into his sleeper, and he arrived the next morning at 7 a.m. And there is a great book about this particular train, and it's put out by the Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis. They put out some absolutely stunning books, but this book tells you every car, the total history of this train, all the different cars that have pictures, and it's a great reference point when you want to model the train. The train that I'm modeling here is could be in the late 50s. It lasted almost up to Amtrak, and I remember in 1965 my mother-in-law said that she rode the Zephyr-Rocket, and I said there was never such a train. She says there absolutely was. she says she wrote it. And we had this big argument, and I got to research it, and I had to humble myself to my mother-in-law that she was right. There was such a train as the Zephyr-Rocket. But there's a lot of literature on this train. For an example, here's one. It says that, you know, the joint CB&Q and Rock Island Zephyr-Rocket. And it tells me the complete concepts of each train. And it's very, very unique train. I really like it because it's a combination of the CB&Q and Rock Island, which I'm a Q fan, Rock Island fan, and well, I'm a fan of a lot. But this train is very, very unique. And that's the way it is at the world famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is a pleasure.